Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. One of the great things about a holiday weekend is that you get some time off, get away, whatever. Bad thing is news gets lost in the shuffle, and then you got to kind of make up for lost time by the time the end of the weekend is here. And there was a piece of news from Thursday night. I'll be real. I got away starting Thursday, was actually with my mom watching the OKC Thunder game in a sports book in Vegas. And I look at my phone, and we were expecting a big-time portal commitment to NC State last week. Just turns out it wasn't the one that we thought. As Thursday night, Darrion Williams, 6'6" forward, originally played at, well, he actually originally played at Nevada, but played the last 2 years at Texas Tech. He ends up entering the portal after the season, going through the draft process. He withdraws from the draft. Now, I'll be honest, you can find a video where I said I thought Kansas was the favorite. Well, Will Wade had some other plans because Darrion Williams on Thursday night commits to the NC State Wolfpack. And I just got to say, I need to come up with a catchphrase for Will Wade because I have a feeling this will not be the last big-time commitment that we discuss with Will Wade, but he gets his man. He gets the most important recruit of his early regime. And I think bottom line, this proves Will Wade is exactly who we thought he was. And in my opinion, NC State has a top 25 roster going into next year. This is kind of the biggest commitment to NC State basketball in a while. I think Will Wade is here to stay. I think he's going to be a problem for the ACC. So let's go ahead and dive in. By the way, if anyone has any good Will Wade taglines, I mean, we had Hope and Pope. We got Big Pig Invasion. We need something for the pack because I think Will Wade's not going anywhere for a while. As a matter of fact, he told me, he said on the show, the next job I take after McNeese, I want to spend the next 10 or 15 years there. So Will Wade ain't going anywhere. He gets Darrion Williams. Let's go ahead and dive in. First of all, the Darrion Williams thing is just interesting, right? Because we talked about him. The last full show we did was last Monday night. And like I said, I don't even think at the time he had technically withdrawn from the NBA draft. But he didn't have a great combine, but it does not mean that he is not a great college basketball player. That's exactly what he is, and that's exactly what he showed in this last season, really the last couple seasons, if we're being perfectly honest, at Texas Tech. This past season, he was phenomenal, okay? All Big 12, finished the season averaging 15 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, or 34% shooting from 3 as a 6'6" stretch forward. What's interesting is those 3-point stats were actually a little bit down, but like he's the cliche, like Swiss Army knife, can do a little bit of everything, really skilled for a guy his size. And what's also very interesting, at least from my perspective, he played his best basketball late in the season. 23 points in that Elite Eight loss to Florida. How about this? 20-9 against Arkansas in the Sweet 16. 28-6-5 in the round of 32. So when you're playing that well at a level that high, you're a great college basketball player. And listen, there are great NBA draft shows. This is not an NBA draft show. I don't care about how he projects as an NBA player. I mean, I care for him because I want success for everybody. But I care about him as a college basketball player, and he is a really good one. And in my opinion, he is the key piece, the most important piece to a now very, very, very interesting NC State squad, okay? And this is why you hire Will Wade. We told you. I said it last week when I thought PJ Haggerty was committing. By the way, the PJ Haggerty thing's another conversation. I don't think we'll really discuss it. That I feel bad for the kid because the dad just totally screwed that one up. But anyway, this is why you hire Will Wade. And it's funny, right? We're going to talk about Kansas in a minute. Why can't they close on guys? How good is Carolina? And the thing I keep coming back to is something that Will Wade actually said on his show, on this show. He said, it doesn't matter how much money you have in NIL. Everyone wants to talk about NIL this and NIL that. He said, you have to have people on your staff that have the relationships to get in touch with these kids. It doesn't matter. You can't, everyone thinks you just throw money. Everybody's got money, but do you have the relationships to get a kid on campus, to convince them that you're the right school? Do you have the information that they want to hear? And that's exactly what happened with this Darrion Williams thing, but also with all of these other kids. First of all, I could be wrong because, again, I was traveling. I don't even think it was public that he took a visit to NC State. I think there was a thought he's going to Kansas. He's going to commit there. Well, he goes to NC State, ends up committing shortly after that's all said and done. But two, you look at this roster that NC State has put together, and in my opinion, it's a top 25 team. As I said, it is the clear third best team in the ACC behind only Duke and only Louisville. And again, we'll update a top 25 here in the coming days. But when you look at Darrion Williams, he is the star piece that you needed. But the counter to that is he is the essentially final piece. They might add another piece or two. But he's the piece that kind of brings everything else together, right? Because you have very good players playing very unique and distinct roles, but you needed that guy that could just take over games and win games for you in the ACC, and that's who he is. And so outside of Darrion Williams, I really like the pieces and how they fit. Trey Holloman, I've mentioned this, I think, a few times now, but I was at one of his first college games. Michigan State played one of those aircraft carrier games against Gonzaga back in the 2022-2023 season, I believe, or maybe it was, 2022-2023. Played one of those aircraft carrier games. I was there. He comes off the bench. I loved his energy, and I've been following his career. I was like, who is that guy? He's really fun to watch. He plays hard. So he's going there. Quadir Copeland, who led McNeese in assists last year, began his career at Syracuse, so you know he can play in the ACC. He's coming with Will Wade. Terrence Arsenault from Houston is a really good player. Matthew Abel, I believe, is the highest-ranked high school recruit to commit to NC State since maybe Dennis Smith Jr. And so I just bring it up because this is a very good roster. But again, and I know I'm starting to repeat myself, but I just want to make this is why you hire Will Wade, because he can flip it in an offseason. He's one of these guys, and we talk about it all the time, these new age coaches that get how the portal works, get how NIL works, get how relationships work, and doesn't need 3 or 4 or 5 years. There is no one else you could have hired this offseason that would have guaranteed you or put you in a better position than you're in right now if you're NC State. Now all of a sudden you're looking around, and again, is there a piece or two to add? No, but if everything goes to plan, and it should, you're going back to the NCAA tournament next year, and you are going to be a player for years in the ACC going forward. And so this is why you hire Will Wade. This is why you bring him in. This is the kind of roster that you can put together. And here's the crazy part. He did this, hitting the ground running. He didn't have a full year. He didn't have a full off season. I go back and think about some of the teams he had at LSU. I mentioned this the other day. I think we forget how much talent he had at LSU during his time there. Watching the Western Conference Finals, Naz Reid is there. Cam Thomas led the Brooklyn Nets in scoring. Tari Eason in the NBA. Who else? Who was the other one that I really liked? Trenton Watford in the NBA. Javonte Smart got a cup of coffee. So think about all the players that he had and all of the guys that he has put in the NBA out of LSU, and think about what he can do at NC State. And so I'm so fired up for this. By the way, it's sort of related, but sort of not related. What I think about when I see this commitment seemingly out of nowhere in a spot where people didn't think he was going to NC State, Darrion Williams, what it reminds me of is the conversation that we had the day that Will Wade got hired. I remember it was during the NCAA tournament. It might have even been the day that he basically unofficially said, yeah, I talked to NC State. I've taken the job. I don't think he officially said he took it. But I remember saying, I said, look, this is the one guy that Carolina doesn't want and that Duke doesn't want at NC State. Now, Duke's always going to be okay. They're going to be fine under John Shire. They're going to be good. But I was thinking about this. Darrion Williams is better than anybody that North Carolina got out of the portal this offseason. And it's just interesting to me is that what I was thinking about over the weekend was, I think you could argue, biggest losers in this whole situation, probably PJ Haggerty is one, because now he's going to Kansas State on a bad team in a good conference. And I don't know. I think if they had to do it over, they either would have stayed at Memphis or maybe taken their NC State opportunity earlier. But the second biggest loser, I think, is Carolina, because we've talked about Carolina. I'm not trying to make this a bash Carolina segment, but this was a program that all season long, oh, we don't have this, we need that. Well, they hire a general manager, they raise a bunch of money, but that feels like a program to me that, do they have the people in place with the relationships in place to get stuff done, get kids to campus, get kids visiting, get kids wanting to be a part of what you're doing? I know Will Wade can do that. I'm not sure Hubert Davis can, but it goes back to the day that Will Wade was hired. I said, you know what? I think this is going to work, but more importantly, I think this is the one guy that North Carolina didn't want and Duke didn't want. So shout out to NC State. Shout out to Will Wade. They get their star for next year. And as I said, with the draft deadline quickly approaching, we'll do one final top 25. This will probably be the final top 25 of the spring as we start transitioning to more and more football content. We'll also do, by the way, our offseason grade series, which was very popular last year. Credit Will Wade. He gets the job done.